Good morning. We are getting into a practice of lunge today. Now, word of warning, if you have SI joint issues, I would not recommend this practice. If you have knee issues where you like kneeling like this is a problem, I wouldn't do this practice. I would go through my feed and find the back to basics practice from last Thursday, and I would play there. Okay, so what you're going to need for this practice is a block to be handy. We're going to begin with 2 prep poses and then 6 versions of lunge. Let's start to begin. So we're going to start on our backs and on our side. Okay, not our side, on our backs, and I'm going to be looking at you from the side. Okay, I'm just going to put this pelvis off to the side here. Okay, so we're going to start with our legs up like this, and then you're going to take one leg over, and then you're going to follow it with the other leg. Now you can do this with your legs on the wall if you have some trouble keeping those legs up. And you can slide your legs along the wall and come over and then slide them back up. Right? So you're leading with one leg and then the other leg and your pelvis come around. Okay? Now one thing I want you to notice is as you bring this leg down, this leg is following. Now this leg, you could just drop it, but I want you to look down and see how your knees are not on top of each other. So what I want you to notice is the reason why is because your pelvis isn't coming around. So as your pelvis comes around, those knees will be more lined up. However, if you don't have the ability to move your pelvis because you're limited through your back or through your ribs or through the tissue that's connecting between your pelvis and your shoulders, then you just won't be able to do it. So I want you to only go as far as you can feel the pelvis doing or leading the rotation, and your shoulders are on the ground. So pay really, really, really close attention to your movement and how your pelvis is moving relative to your ribs. So I'm just going to keep my movement super small so you can get an idea of this. My shoulders are staying on the ground. Easy, easy breathing. Leading with one leg. And then you might start to feel how things loosen up a little bit between the ribs and your back and your spine and your pelvis. Come into your breathing and your overall level of awareness. A few more either side. Okay, lovely. Just take a moment and lie on your back and notice what it is that you now feel here between your pelvis and your ribs, your spine and your legs, and your breathing. All right, lovely. Okay, let's roll on over and coming up into kneeling. Let me put my mic pack back on. Whoops. And I want you to grab a block, and you're going to take the block in this orientation, and you're going to place it between your heels, like so. I'm going to keep fiddling with this mic pack. There we go. Okay, so I've got this block between my heels, and all I'm doing is pressing my heels. So if I go at this from this orientation for you, I'm just standing on my knees like this, which is why I wanted to make sure that those of you who have knee issues when you're kneeling knew that this is what this practice was about. So you knew what you were getting into. Yeah? Okay, if I do it from this back side, it looks like this. Okay? Now, I want you just to press those heels into the block. Press and release. Press and release. Press and release. Now, when you're doing this, I don't want you to use your hamstrings. I want you just to press your heels and release. Now, you might feel something up in your bum because of the kinetic chain from your heel up through to your bum. There is likely going to be some level of rotation, but I don't want you to try to make rotation up through your hip because the thing that's generating the movement is the pressing of your heels against the block. Yeah? So we're generating it from the bottom of the leg, the bottom of the chain, and you might feel something here. I don't want you to feel any back pain or SI joint issue, and keep those hamstrings quiet. So you might find yourself having a bit of trouble balancing and moving forward and back. That's often a major reason why the hamstrings kick in. So just take your hands onto your bum and press those heels into the block. Good. Okay, now from here, take that block away for a moment. All right, so now we're going to come into lunge number 1. We're going to take one leg forward. Okay, and all we're doing is really simple. Keep that pelvis level. So here, my pelvis, my two ASISs are right here. Yeah, and then we're going to come forward. Now there is a length orientation between my back leg and my shin. So my pelvis isn't going to be completely level, just so you know. Unless your thigh bone is the same length as your shin bone. Yeah. But we're wanting to stay relatively even as we go across. So sometimes what can happen is people can come into this and then arch their back like so. And I don't want you to do that. I just want you to move forward. Now, because you're moving beyond 3 to 11 degrees here of extension through this leg, your pelvis will go into an anterior tilt. We're not trying to avoid that, but it's just a breaking, right? We want to keep this as a harmonious movement. Good. Good. Okay, let's go to the other side. Same thing. Okay, now this time I want you to feel the back foot, like the top of the back foot on the floor, as well as 3 points of your feet. Center of your heel, ball of your foot, base of your pinky toe. And just notice your breathing as you go. Okay, so now while we're here, let's start to take ourselves into a side bend. Now here's what's really important, is we're not bringing the hip out to the side, right? So you can see the blue of my sweatshirt, or of my shirt here. So watch that blue. Yeah, it's not that. Think about moving from here. Yeah. So we're moving ourselves into a very, very, very small side bend. What I like to use to help bring a quiet clarity is I want you to imagine there's a small teacup on the ground. You are a teapot and the water comes out your armpit, down the inside of your arm, down towards that teapot. Yeah. So the movement is coming very specifically up through your torso. And you'll get a feel if you are if you want to shove, I'm just going to come over here to hold. People will sometimes want to shove their ribs to the left, like lateral shift, when they don't have the suppleness through this lateral line. So just notice that for yourself if that's what you're doing. It's the beauty of having a camera to watch yourself move. Good. Okay, good. And then come back up. All right, now bring your hands together and let's do a twist. So we're twisting toward the standing or the front leg. Yeah, easy breathing. Really, really, really easy breathing. Good. And then bring one arm onto the leg and just think about retracting this back shoulder blade for a moment. Good. And then come on back, right? And then come down. Okay, bring it back up. And let's take a side bend. This side for me today is a little bit less. You can see that here. You can see how I kind of slide. Watch my hip. See how my hip goes out like that a little bit? So for some reason, I'm just a little bit more limited this morning coming through here. Good. Okay. Interesting. So then we're going to take ourselves into a twist. So taking that twist over. Good. One arm comes over. And then feeling the retraction of the back shoulder blade toward the spine. Noticing the bottoms of your, or the bottom of your front foot and the top of your back foot. Good. And then come on back. Lovely. All right, let's take a breather here. Grab the block again between your legs, or between your heels, and let's just squeeze and release. Squeeze and release. Squeeze and release. Squeeze and release. Okay, good. Now, we're going to bring this leg, I'm going to do it this way. We're going to bring this leg forward into a lunge. Watch my back foot. So now we're going to pull the back foot up. So we're not coming onto the toes. We're sliding the back foot up. So we're on the forefoot of the foot, but pulling up with those toes. You might feel a little bit of engagement through the back leg. Good. Now start to play around with your side bend. And your twist. Good. All right, now let's do that again. We're going to take the toes under like this. Press the heel back. And side bend. And twist. Press that heel back. Good. And then come back. Good. Let's go to the other side. So here, pull the back foot up. So you feel yourself in the back forefoot. Good. And then start to take a side bend. Lovely. And then take a twist. And then take the back toes under, press the heel back. So I do it from this angle for you. The back toes are under, pressing the heel back. And we're going to take a side bend. Whoops. Take a side bend. And take a twist. I love doing this with my runners. Let's do one more. Take a side bend. And take a twist. Good. And then let that come back. Good. And then for a moment, let's bring the block between your ankles again. I like doing this with my runners and my stand-up paddlers. And we're just going to squeeze again. Because having one leg in front of the other leg, you have one leg doing one thing, the other leg doing the other. So it puts some inherent instability, which is why I cautioned for people who have SI joint issues. You might not be ready for it quite yet. But when people have that initial base of SI joint pain settled out, their piriformis is settled out, their back is settled out, and they've got that fundamental foundational relief, then when we can start to build up more stability, we'll at some point come to doing some sort of lunge. And it's a great way of building some strength and some mobility and stability so that they can do their running really, really well. They can do their stand-up paddling. Same with cycling. Good, let's just do a few more of those. Good. And then let's bring this block in front now. And we're going to bring the leg forward again. This is our last one. Okay, we're going to come forward. Okay, good. And then let's bring the block handy here. And now, if you need it, and then we're going to take ourselves back and straighten it through this front leg. We're going to come forward into a lunge, and then we're going to be straightening through this leg. Okay, let me show it to you on the side. Okay, so we're coming forward into our lunge, and then we're going to straighten through this front leg. Now I'm also coming forward through my hips. So you'll see that the orientation of my torso hasn't changed, right? Because the articulating joints are still the hips and the knees. Yeah. And back forward. Now you can also play with, my foot's on the floor, right? My bottom of my foot is staying on the floor. You can also play with bringing the foot off the floor. And notice how that is different. And you can stay in whichever one you feel like staying in. They're a little different, one with the bottom of the foot on the floor, the other one with the bottom of the foot off the floor. Neither are better. You just get to play with whichever one you really want to play with today. And just easy breathing. Easy breathing. And now I'm making an assumption that you're not moving in a range that increases pain or strain. Good. Okay, let that go. Other side. Okay, good. And then come forward and then back. Good. And then forward and back. There you go. And then you can stop and stay and just explore. You can also bring that foot off the mat and just notice what you're experiencing. So play around with whichever one you want to play around with more, whether it's the foot coming off the floor or the foot staying on the floor. You decide for yourself what makes the most sense for you. Good, and then come out of that, and then let's come back into kneeling, and then have the block between your heels again. Good, and now let's start to press those heels again into the block. Notice what you're feeling through your pelvis and your hips and your legs and your heels. Notice how your rib cage is being placed over top of your pelvis now. And if anything has changed after doing what we've done with this lunge work. Okay, and let's bring that away. Let's come back down to the floor and come back to the first movement that we did. which was the twisting one. So come onto your back and legs come up. You can also use the wall, and one leg leads. You rotate through that pelvis, torso, other leg follows. Leg lifts and other leg follows. And leg lifts, other leg follows. Keep the breathing easy. Just a couple of more. What I like coming back sometimes to the first movements that I may have done in a practice, I find it interesting to come back and just see now what things feel like. So it's a nice evaluation, having done a variety of different poses and movements and little techniques. Just gives me a feeling of where my body is at now, particularly because I'm doing this practice within about 30 minutes of waking up, right? And so this practice started just before 5 a.m. So it's interesting to see my body starting to shift and change. So you can stay on your back or you can roll it over and come on up into seated. We'll just finish up for this morning. Grab your block again if you're going to be seated and come into a cross-legged position or in a kneeling position. You decide. And now just notice yourself in your pelvis and your legs. Sometimes what can happen after doing a practice like that and you're sitting, you just feel yourself more vertical than you have. You might also, if you're on your back, notice your pelvis sinking a bit more, your whole body imprinting a bit more into the floor. Excuse me. And it just becomes interesting to notice the change. And what I love to say to people is just know that that could be your new normal, right? That glimpse of a shift, that could be your new normal. Now, to be able to have it become a new normal means you need to pay attention to when this new feeling starts to fade away. Because the other normal that you know, that I call it like, so if this feels good and this feels not as good, this one we have more of a knowing of, right? It's a bit more of a grooved neurological, neuromuscular pattern that comes with a variety of emotional and thought patterns too. So this one's new up here. This one's very grooved over here. So we need to pay attention to when this one starts to fade and then intervene to help this one get more grooved. Yeah? So that this up here becomes a default. You just need to pay attention, yeah? Pay attention, be aware, notice when things start to change because they will, just like we'll get hungry and we'll get thirsty and we'll get tired. Things will change. So when things change, watch what your response is. And just like when we get hungry, we eat, and when we're thirsty, we drink, and when we're tired, we sleep. So when we feel the shifting and changing in our body is giving us the indication that it needs something. Yeah? So then just give it to them. Give it to it. Just like you would feed and drink yourself. Yeah? And then you will start to see your body change consistently and consistently and consistently. I had one colleague of mine say to me yesterday, I'll finish off with this line, which I thought was great. He did a very complex practice. And 2 years ago, he had learned this complex practice. And he said he was older 2 years ago than he is today. Food for thought. He was older 2 years ago than he was today. His body is moving better. He's more supple. His brain is clearer now than it was 2 years ago. So with that, let's bring hands together, palms touching. Feel the energy between your hands, connecting back into your heart and back into your guts and back into your bones, your breath and your blood. This is all what is real. Breathing in with ease and out with gratitude. You have a really, 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 really great day. Namaste. We will see you tomorrow morning.